typically, give us, when you think necessity is the mother of learning, what was the moment, what was the thing, what was the problem or opportunity that you saw, that you tackled, that you thought was going to move us forward? So talk a little bit about that moment for you. How'd you come upon it?
As everyone looks to me. So I came to the industry 10 years ago, and I was looking really forward to it. I mean, it's a huge industry. I love the people. I love what we do. And then what I quickly discovered is, oh my gosh, the way we're doing it isn't going to work for the next 10, 20 years. And I learned also very quickly that we're very used to doing things the way we've usually done them. And when I realized that was going to be a challenge, that created the necessity, right? When you talk about the mother of invention. So we had to invent new ways of doing things. And I've always been a champion for new and better ways of approaching things, and I took it on.
Okay, great.
I think for me, it was taking a look at the marketplace. We know that by next year, $72 trillion of wealth will be held by women. And most of the private wealth that's going to be transferred is going to be transferred to women. So there's an enormous opportunity to really make a difference. And so I really wanted to be a part of inventing my future rather than just predicting it and waiting for it to happen to me. So it seemed like the right time and the right moment to really do something bold and take a stand.
Did you say 72 trillion?
72 trillion.
By?
Next year, 2020. And that was in The Economist just a few days ago for International Women's Day. So it's a recent number.
That's great.
Yeah, I think, and thanks, by the way, for having us here, Kelly, and for the rest of the community. I think, like my colleagues, it's very much true. Necessity was the mother of our invention with Asset Map. And I think probably not like everybody else in this community, we've all used Excel to solve a problem, right? When we didn't quite have the answer there, we grabbed a piece of paper, we solved the problem, we drew a diagram, we created some Excel to solve the problem that we were trying to address. But for us, it was literally to try to find a better way to communicate. And I think our frustration around the complexity that we deal with our clients, to try to communicate very complex ideas in a simple way where they can take action and not make this a 5-month sales cycle, is pretty kind of the necessity that we use to generate Asset Map.
All right. And so along this journey, and I'll have you give us a little overview, like a little snippet, but I'm curious, before we get there, did anything surprise you along the way? Like, any surprises that you weren't prepared for?
Yeah. I had a couple, and what was interesting is I had surprises when I did research and talking to women, and I had surprises also on the innovation front. So with women, what I found to be really surprising is how many of them said that when they want to work with advisors, but they wouldn't work with a friend or family member.
Oh.
They would get a recommendation from them, but they would not choose to work with a friend or family member. And I kind of thought that might be the case, but I was really surprised at how many of them said that to us. And we've spent hundreds of hours talking to thousands of women at this point. On the innovation front, I think that what I was really surprised about was how many people were kind of a little skeptical. They didn't know what we were creating, so there was a lot of skepticism. And so I think you just have to really be bold and brave and really look towards thinking about what's next. And that's always been a big driver for me, is going to what's next, not just being comfortable in where we are today.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I think the surprise for me was I came from a different industry when I got into this business. I came actually, and I'm going to share this in our breakout session this afternoon, I came from an artistic, architectural type of background. And I was surprised at how difficult it was to innovate in our space, right? How difficult it was to kind of put your mark, because we've obviously got a significant regulation. We've got a huge infrastructure and legacy decisions that have been made even decades ago that are still influencing our companies. And I think we're finally getting to the place where we're actually starting to unwind some of these things, because we recognize that they could be holding us back, given what everybody's been talking about at the following sessions. So I think that the big surprise for me, Kelly, was how challenging it was going to be to actually innovate and make a mark in our industry. And I'm glad to see that we're starting to see some changes there.
Yeah, that's great.
I was surprised everybody didn't see the need to change.
The need to change?
The need to change, yeah. When I came in, it was just obvious to me. I remember sitting in the first meeting. So first I was actually a client, right, of one of our own advisors before I came into the firm. And I just remember sitting in multiple meetings, not with my advisor, but with several of our folks in the different processes as I was learning, and finding out how uncomfortable some of the questions they'd get were and how uncomfortable they were in answering them, right? And what I started to realize was like people were forcing things to happen and they weren't figuring out ways of inviting them to happen. And my background is like in no small part in marketing and not so much sales. I've certainly become much more knowledgeable in sales over the last decade, but sales is the intention to produce a transaction. And marketing is working to trigger somebody to want something. And so what was surprising to me is how unusual it was to just learn how to trigger people to want things and not make it so hard. And how difficult it was to get people to kind of come on board with, hey, we can change this. We can make this a more desirable process for the client.